Okay. Last week I promised I would take a look at Spring Boot Data Geode, and this is my best attempt at showing off this cool project. So before we get into it, just a reminder that Spring One platform is right around the corner. If you're going, reach out, say hi. I'll be there. If you're not, there's going to be some really awesome content posted throughout the conference, and there's going to be a solid social media presence to follow, especially on Twitter. So a couple weeks ago, Spring Boot for Apache Geode had their Milestone 2 release of their 1.0, and today we're going to take a look. So what do I got in this example? So one of the contributors to the project, John Bloom's got this good example that we're going to take a look at here today. So first things first, we have a little client, and this should look really familiar. But when I hear boot, I hear convention over configuration. I hear an opinionated way on getting started, and that strong opinionated approach allows us to create simpler systems and get started faster. So we looked at Spring Data Geode in the past, and this the boot version allows us to get started even faster. So all I have to do here is create. This is a Spring Boot application, so I have that annotation. Add an annotation for enabling cluster configuration. What that's going to do is it's going to look at all our classes, and it's going to map all of our classes to regions. Then I add the enable entity define regions annotation, and I pass it in. It takes a base class and then searches throughout kind of all my other classes. And what that does is allows me to use a lot of the Spring data conventions to access my data. And this is a really simple application. It takes some arguments, and when it spins up, it runs and creates a new instance of book, does a couple assertions on what that is, saves it to the cluster, and then we use find by title, pass in title, and that gives us our object back. Pretty simple. We've seen this before. So here's kind of the cool part that we're going to take a look at today. Sometimes, messing around with GFish isn't ideal for when we're doing active development. We want to stay in our IDE. What we can do here is we can write a full-on server, run this, and we're up and running. And this can even be brought into production as well. So all we have to do here is at Spring Boot application, so add that annotation. Then we're going to have a at cacheable server application. And what this is going to do is it's going to, when this starts up, it's going to create a server node, server member node in our cluster. And it's going to do a few other things too. It's going to be able to hold data, just like we've seen in the past from any server. But it's also going to act as a locator that is going to be accessible here. To do this, we have to have a profile, so a locator manager. We enable the configuration, we enable locator, and it's also going to be a JMX manager through that. So to get this going, we have to do a few things in our config. First things first is we just have to -d Spring profiles and activate that profile we created here. And then we run it. So if we go here and let's run server number 1. So this is going to spin up, and it's going to spin up a node. It's running, and we can talk to it. We can also do a few things. Down here, I have another profile. let's take a look at what I'm doing differently. We're going to add another member node, but it's not going to act as a locator. So all we have to do here, we can use the same code. We're going to pass in some different VM options. So -d Spring Data Gemfire, and the name. So over here I said I defined it as server 1, but I don't want to change that code and have a bunch of stuff over here. I can just change it in my here in my configurations. So naming this server 2, and we're starting it up on a different port because we're doing everything locally. And the server 1 is running on default. So boom, start this up. And let's look at a familiar tool, gfish, to actually kind of verify what's going on. So starting up gfish. Now I haven't started a locator, haven't started a server like we've done in the past, and I'm connected to a cluster, and I can list members. So server 1, server 2, that we started up over here. Now if I list regions, nothing. So if I go over here back to this our client and run this, when this starts up, remember this is putting that book, and it's also going to, before that, it's going to create some regions. So you can see that finished. Just to verify what's going on, if we list regions again, we can see that book was created, and if I get, and we'll pass in region books, and we'll pass in a key, and I think I just made up a kind of a silly key, 3, 2, 1, and there's our book that we put in. I hope this was a quick introduction to Spring Boot Data Geode. We're going to be looking at this really awesome project more in future episodes, and I'll talk to you next week.